She didn't ask for money. She asked for food. And 5 minutes later, she opened a safe no one else could. Chicago that evening felt like it was made of damp concrete and old wind. A hard lakefront cold slid between buildings, rattling flags and turning breath into smoke. The kind of weather that makes you miss people you haven't talked to in years. Inside Northwind Plaza, everything looked warm and polished. Glass, marble, soft lighting that made everyone's skin look healthier than it really was. Employees drifted toward the exits, talking about bonuses, holiday plans, back pain, grandkids, and how time seems to speed up after 50. Someone laughed about the office being brighter than their own house. Someone else said, "At least the lobby's heated. My joints are suing me." Then the revolving doors turned. A girl stepped in, and the lobby went quiet like someone had lowered the volume. She was about 15, thin enough that her coat looked like a borrowed curtain. The fabric was old, gray, and too big in the shoulders. Her backpack was faded and scuffed, held tight against her chest like it was the last thing in the world that belonged to her. Her name was Emily Carter. The security guard, Frank, late 50s, former cop, moved automatically. He'd spent years learning the difference between a lost kid and a setup. He took one step forward, ready to do what he always did, stop the problem at the door. "Miss, you can't—" Then Emily looked up. Her eyes were tired, steady, and oddly calm, not glassy, not panicked, not performative. "I need to speak to the owner," she said quietly, "just for 1 minute." Frank blinked. "Honey, this is private property." "I know," she swallowed once. "I'm not asking for money." That line made a few people stop pretending they weren't listening. Emily continued, voice low but clear. "I just need something to eat. And 1 minute of his time." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a speech. That's what made it uncomfortable. A middle manager near the coffee kiosk muttered, "Here we go." Another person whispered, "Do we call someone?" A woman in a nice coat frowned like the cold had followed Emily inside. Then a sharper voice cut through. Dana Wells, the chief financial officer, was walking through the lobby with her coat already on and her phone in hand. Dana was known for 2 things: never smiling in photos and never letting surprises become headlines. "What is this?" Dana asked Frank, eyes narrowed. "We have protocols." "It's fine," Frank said, but his tone wasn't confident. Dana looked at Emily. "Where are your parents?" Emily's fingers tightened on her backpack strap. "I don't have anyone." Dana's jaw tightened. "Then you need to go to a shelter. We can call social services." Emily didn't flinch, but something dark flickered behind her calm. "Please don't." Dana's eyes sharpened. "Why?" Emily hesitated for half a beat, just long enough for every adult in that lobby to feel the weight behind her answer. "Because they'll move me again," she said, "and I won't find what I came for." That made a few people shift their feet, the older employees especially, people who had raised kids, lost siblings, lived long enough to know there are things worse than hunger. Dana pressed her lips together. "Frank, this is a security risk. If this ends up on the internet—" Frank leaned in, voice lowered. "She's not here to steal. Look at her." Dana didn't look away from Emily. "That's exactly what worries me. People don't come here unless they want something." Emily whispered, almost to herself, "I want food. That's all." Right then, the elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and Richard Callahan stepped into the lobby. Tall, early 60s, perfect suit, the calm posture of a man who had spent decades being obeyed without raising his voice. He didn't look like a villain. He looked like the kind of man who'd shake your hand and forget your name instantly. Callahan was heading out for a dinner with investors, the kind of dinner where people smiled while quietly measuring each other's weaknesses. Frank approached him, speaking low. Dana stepped in, already ready to control the narrative. "Richard, we have an issue," Dana said. "A minor is in the lobby. She's asking to speak to you. This is not—" Callahan's gaze landed on Emily. At first, it was casual curiosity, a strange interruption, a small inconvenience to be brushed aside. Then he saw her coat, her backpack, her stillness, not begging, not acting, just standing there like she decided this was her last door. Callahan's mouth twitched into a half-smile, the one he used when tension made him uncomfortable. He walked closer, hands relaxed, like he had all the time in the world. "What's your name?" he asked. "Emily." "What do you want, Emily?" She met his eyes. "Food. And 1 minute." A couple people snickered softly. One man whispered, "This is going to be good." Callahan glanced around, feeling the eyes on him. He'd made a career out of not looking rattled in public. He reached for humor, the shield he used when something got too real. "Tell you what," he said lightly, "you open my safe upstairs, and I'll give you $10 million. Laughter bounced off marble. Dana smiled, relieved. A joke meant control. A joke meant this wasn't serious. Frank didn't laugh. Emily didn't either. She nodded once. "Okay." That response cut the laughter short like a snapped wire. Callahan raised an eyebrow. "Okay?" "Yes," Emily said. "Can you show me the safe?" Dana's face tightened. "Richard, absolutely not. This is—" Callahan held up a hand, still smiling, but there was steel under it. "Relax. It's a safe, not a nuclear launch code." Dana said, "It's also a liability." Callahan looked at Emily again. "1 attempt," he said. "Then you eat and you go." Emily's voice stayed even. 1 attempt. They took the private elevator to the top floor. The executive suite smelled like expensive wood and quiet power. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked down over Chicago like the city belonged to whoever stood closest to the glass. Built into the wall behind Callahan's desk was the safe. It didn't look like the ones you see in movies. No spinning wheel, no dramatic handle, just seamless metal and a digital keypad flush with the wall. Custom built, upgraded, monitored. Callahan's senior engineer liked to say it was more secure than most marriages. Employees crowded into the doorway. Frank stood near the hall, arms crossed. Dana stayed by the door, phone in hand, already imagining tomorrow's risk report. Emily approached slowly. Not like a thief, not like someone trying to impress anyone, like someone greeting a memory. She knelt, placed her palm on the keypad, and closed her eyes. The room fell into a hush. Callahan felt something tighten in his chest, a strange, irritating sensation. Uncertainty. Emily opened her eyes and began entering numbers. A few people whispered and counted like a game show. 3, 4, 5. A soft beep. Nothing happened. Someone chuckled. "There it is." Callahan exhaled through his nose, half relieved, half annoyed that he'd felt nervous at all. Emily didn't move away. "May I try one more?" she asked, voice quiet but firm. Dana snapped, "No, this is done." Emily looked at Callahan, not pleading, waiting. Callahan hesitated. He didn't know why. He couldn't explain it. But something about her steadiness made him feel like the joke was no longer his to control. "1 more," he said. Dana's head turned sharply. "Richard, 1 more," Callahan repeated. Emily adjusted her posture, closer to the keypad now. She didn't rush. She didn't tremble. She looked focused, like she was listening to the safe rather than pushing buttons. Then she entered a second sequence. The beeps sounded the same, but the air in the room changed. A long 2 seconds passed, then click. A small sound, precise, final. The safe door shifted outward by an inch. Silence slammed into the room. A woman gasped, loud enough that it echoed. Dana froze. Frank's eyes widened. Someone whispered, "No way." Callahan stepped forward, his smile gone like it had never existed. "That's impossible," he said softly. He stared at the open seam of the safe as if it had betrayed him personally. Then he looked at Emily. His voice dropped. No humor, no showmanship, just raw seriousness. "How did you do that?" Emily rose slowly. The safe sat open beside her like a confession. "My dad," she said. Callahan blinked. "Your dad?" Emily nodded. "He was an engineer. Security systems, safes, locks. He worked with a contractor that did builds for corporate clients. He used to talk about master patterns." Dana found her voice again, sharp. "That's not how it works. That's not—" Emily looked at her. "Sometimes it is." The room stayed dead quiet. Emily continued, choosing her words carefully. My dad said a lot of owners change the code but keep the same base structure because it's good enough. He said people get comfortable. They assume the system is smarter than the human. Callahan's throat tightened. Why do you know that? He asked. Emily's calm flickered for the first time. Just for a moment, she looked like what she was, a kid carrying something too heavy. He taught me because he didn't want me to be helpless, she said. He said, if you understand how things work, you can survive. Callahan stared at her. And where is he now? Callahan asked. Emily's eyes dropped. Gone. The word was small, but it hit the room like a punch. Callahan stepped back, glancing into his safe, not even thinking about what was inside anymore. For the first time in years, the thing that made him feel exposed wasn't a financial risk. It was a child standing in his office with a truth he couldn't buy away. You won, he said, voice quieter now. 10 million. Emily shook her head immediately. No. Dana exhaled sharply, almost relieved. Good. Emily looked at Callahan. I don't want money. Callahan frowned. Why not? Emily's answer came steady, but it wasn't rehearsed. It was lived. Money makes adults ask questions, she said. Money makes people take things. Money disappears. Food doesn't. That line, simple and brutal, landed hard, especially on the older employees, people who'd seen family fall apart over inheritances, people who'd lived through layoffs and divorces and medical bills, and the slow heartbreak of watching someone you love change. Callahan felt his chest tighten again. He suddenly remembered being 19, sitting in a car in winter because he didn't have a place to sleep. He remembered telling himself that once he had money, he'd never feel that powerless again. And yet, here was a girl who refused money like it was poison. What do you want then? He asked. Emily hesitated, then spoke plainly. I want food. I want to sleep somewhere warm. Just tonight. And I want 1 minute. Callahan looked at her. 1 minute for what? Emily lifted her backpack slightly, as if reminding herself it was still there. My dad told me about this building, she said. About the logo. About the man who owned it. He said if something ever happened and I had nowhere to go, I should come here. He said you weren't kind, but you kept your word. Dana stared at Callahan like she was watching a PR disaster form in slow motion. Callahan didn't look away from Emily. You came here because your father believed I'd keep my word, he said. Emily nodded. Callahan stood very still. Then he turned to Frank. Get her something to eat, he said. Dana cut in quickly. Richard, we need to contact legal. We need— Callahan raised a hand. Later. Dana's voice sharpened. We can't keep a minor in the building. The liability— Callahan looked at her, and for the first time that night, there was no warmth in his expression. Dana, he said quietly, if your whole world is liability, you'll eventually forget what life is. Dana went silent. Frank returned with food, simple, warm, soup, bread, a sandwich, a bottle of water. Emily sat near the window, eating slowly, carefully, like she didn't trust the meal to stay real. Callahan sat across from her, not at his desk, not behind a wall, just a man at a table. How long have you been on your own? He asked. Emily paused, spoon hovering. A while. How long is a while? Emily's eyes flicked up. Since I was 12. The room behind them, employees lingering in the doorway, shifted again. People heard that number and did the math. People with daughters. People with granddaughters. Callahan's jaw tightened. Where have you been sleeping? Emily took a slow breath. Places. Sometimes a shelter. Sometimes the train station. Sometimes in a stairwell if it's not too cold. Dana looked away. Even she couldn't hold the line after that. Callahan asked, why didn't you go to the police? Emily's voice hardened just a little. Because they don't fix it. They move you, and you become a file. Callahan nodded slowly, like he understood far more than he wanted to admit. He leaned forward. Here's what I can do, he said. Not money, not a check. Real help. Dana's head snapped up. Richard. Callahan continued, calm but firm. We'll call a youth advocate, someone who actually works for kids, not paperwork. We'll get you a warm place tonight that isn't a shelter hallway. We'll get you proper clothes, and we'll get you back in school." Emily watched him carefully, like she was trying to see the trick. "And if I say no?" she asked. Callahan didn't flinch. "Then I'll still make sure you eat, and I'll still keep you safe tonight. Then you walk out tomorrow with a full stomach and a phone number you can call if you need it." Emily's shoulders lowered a fraction. That's what did it. Not the money, not the safe, not the power. The fact that he offered help even if she refused him. Emily whispered, almost embarrassed, "Okay." Callahan nodded once, as if sealing a deal he couldn't put into a contract. Later that night, after arrangements were made, after Dana had stopped trying to control the situation and started quietly calling actual resources, after Frank had softened into something like a protective uncle, Emily stood near the safe again. Callahan watched her, still stunned. "You know," he said, voice low, "my best people said that safe couldn't be opened without the code." Emily looked at the open door, then back at him. "People say a lot of things." Callahan let out a short, breathless laugh, not mocking, just human. He looked at her and said, "You came here asking for food, and you ended up showing me my whole life is built around not needing anyone." Emily didn't answer right away. Then she said something that stuck to the air. "My dad used to say, a lock can keep people out, but it can also keep you in." Callahan swallowed hard. That night, when Emily finally left with a caseworker and a warm coat that actually fit, she paused at the elevator. She turned back toward Callahan. "I didn't open it for money," she said. "I know," Callahan replied. Emily nodded once, small, serious, then disappeared behind the closing doors. A year later, on a bright spring afternoon, Callahan sat in the back row of a school auditorium, uncomfortable in a folding chair that felt like it was designed to punish adults. Parents clapped. Grandparents waved phones. Someone nearby whispered about how the world isn't what it used to be. On stage, Emily, clean, healthy, older in a way that wasn't sad anymore, stood at a podium. She spoke about engineering, about systems, about how understanding things can save you. She spoke about the difference between being helped and being seen. When she finished, the room applauded. Emily scanned the crowd and found Callahan. Their eyes met. She didn't smile big. She just gave him the smallest nod, a quiet acknowledgement that changed everything. Callahan clapped until his hands hurt, not because she'd opened a safe, because she'd opened something in him that had been locked for decades. And for the first time in a long time, Richard Callahan didn't feel powerful. He felt grateful. If this story stayed with you, if it reminded you that life can change in one unexpected moment, please like the video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Human Light for more stories about quiet strength, second chances, and the doors we don't expect to open.